So my name is Julie Bennett. I want to thank you for joining me today and also for being beta users for our solution. I'm going to start right away with the agenda. So I'm going to share my screen. There you go. So I take it that you see it now. All right. So the objective, my objective today is twofold. The first one is really to give you guys a good understanding of the core functionalities of PSOhub, but also, of course, to get you ready to start working with the solution. So first, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to show you, give you an overview demo of the core functionalities of PSOhub. So I'm going to create projects, I'm going to do time and expense entries, and we're also going to do billing. I'm also going to talk about how PSOhub integrates with HubSpot, and we're going to see what benefits you get when you actually integrate with that integration. So that will be part one. In part two, I'm going to walk you through the settings of PSOhub so that you can get started with configuring your own organization in PSOhub right after this webinar. All right, so two parts within this session, this 1 hour session. Regarding what I'm telling you today, everything that I say is already documented and already available within PSOhub, so you don't have to worry about that. And also, at the end of the session, I'm going to show you how to access that information, but also how to get live support when you are working with PSOhub. There will also be a quick Q&A at the end of the session as well. So I'm going to start right away. But before we go into the solution, I do want to do a quick review of the vision and concept behind PSOhub. So it is a professional services automation solution, what you call a PSA solution, and it basically helps you manage your project. So you get to work with smart contract, with budget, with predictive analysis. You book time and expenses, but with self-driving functionalities. And you also, of course, get to create invoices that can also be generated automatically, but also posted directly into your financial backend solutions. At this moment, we see that we integrate QuickBooks, but we also integrate with Exact, and we also integrate with Moneybird. Of course, PSOhub integrates with HubSpot, and by doing so, it allows you to promote a deal into a project. Excuse me. And then, of course, all activities that you have within the PSOhub project is then posted back into HubSpot. Your contact and your companies will get to see that also follow in PSOhub, so you don't have to do that entry twice. So this is basically how PSOhub and the hub, if you will, principle behind PSO, between your CRM functionality and your accounting functionality. Now, this slide here shows you how the funnel, the flow from funnel to cash that happens when you integrate PSOhub with HubSpot. And this is the flow that I'm going to follow today when I do my overview demo. So we will go into HubSpot to start with. We have our companies and contacts and campaigns and deals. And I'm going to promote a deal into a project. Then from there, I'm going to set up my contract in PSOhub. I'm going to define a budget, maybe some alerts. And that contract will allow me to book time and expenses towards the project. And also, ultimately, I'm going to create invoices as well. We'll get to see that as the project evolves and unfolds, I will see that all the activity feeds that are generated in PSOhub, that they will also be posted in HubSpot. And I will also see how easily I can dive into a project directly from HubSpot. So that means that your sales rep, they get to see what's going on during the execution phase of the project per se. All right. And this is basically the overview demo that I'm about to show you now. So let's go right into HubSpot. I have already created some deals, as you can see. Let me just minimize this. Very good. So we're going to open up my first deal, the one that is closed as being as one. So we'll start with this guy here. It's a very simple, straightforward deal that I have here. You see that on the right-hand side, I have my contacts. I have two contacts that are related to this deal, and this is for company GFM. On the left-hand side, I see that the deal is of 5,000 euros. And I also see, of course, that the stage is closed as one. So my next step now is to promote this deal into a project so that we can begin with the execution phase of this mandate. So I'm going to scroll down to the right. I'm going to scroll down here, and I have now an entity called PSOhub, and I can click on Create Project. And then my project will now be created. Now, as you can see, I have the message that it's been successful, and now I have a deep link that now is showing up here. So if I want to go to the project, I simply click on that link here, and I'm being brought into the project per se. So your project is now created, and you see that I've got my company that has followed, and my contact has also followed here. On the left-hand side, I see the name of my project, the consultancy mandate. It's basically the description of my deal. And I also see the deal amount showing up here. If I want, if I scroll down a little bit, I can edit that information and change the name of the project, for example, if I see fit. So the project is created at this moment. What's my next step? Well, I'm going to make sure that I create and that I set up the contract here at the project level. So to do so, I'm going to leverage a template, a contract template. So a template is basically a predefined contract that we have, and that allows me to basically modify it to fit to that specific contract that you see here. So out of the box, if I click on Create from Template and click on the down arrow, you see we've got already predefined contracts within the solution. We'll get to see how, where they are in part 2 of our session. But at this moment, I'm going to note this is a consultancy mandate. So this is the template that I'm going to select here, and I'm going to hit Save. So in this example, you see that I've got my contract per se is divided in 2 sections. I have the first one, the first group, which is hours, and I have another group, which is expenses. So in this case, it's a very, very simple, very straightforward contract, but we like these as well, which splits basically my contract lines, consultancy, in hours without my expenses contract lines that are actually showing up here. So what do I do now? Well, basically, technically at this moment, my contract is there. So I could, if I wanted to, create my team and also set up my project as active, and I could start booking time and expenses. But I do want to make this contract smarter. So what I'm going to do is open up the first contract line, consultancy. It has been defined as a T&M, so time and material, which means that as soon as I start booking time towards this contract line, I'm able to invoice these hours per se. So it's the value of those hours that I'm going to invoice through a time and material. I have a budget for this specific line here. So in this case, I'm going to enter 4,000. This is a value. This is the understanding I have with the client that our budget is 4K. Once my budget is entered, I'm going to hit a save. And there you go. Now I see that my budget is now showing up here. In this particular contract, I'm going to add another line. So I'm going to click Add Line. And I'm going to put that under my hour group. My line ID is 02 by default. This is good. And I'm going to enter here just another line, which is going to be project management. I'm going to define this also as a T&M. And my budget in this case is just going to be 1,000. And I'm going to hit save. There you go. So now I've got 2 contract lines for this specific project. Regarding my expenses, I know that I will have expenses here, but they will not be related to travel. So I'm going to open up by clicking the line, and this travel expenses contract line, I'm going to delete. There you go. Proceed. And now I only have 1 line left here. If I want, I can modify as well the line. So I'm going to click on it to open it up. I'm going to change the line ID because I only have 1 now. So I'm going to have it start at 001. And for instead of other expenses, I'm going to enter here courier expenses and leave it as expense. Well, I'll put a budget of 250 here just as a threshold and save. All right, so now I've got my budget that has been defined. If I want, I can add a little bit further. If I go back to my consultancy here, and I can leverage what we call smart contract. So if I check this box here, I'm able to set up some alerts with regards to that contract line. I can set up to 2 alerts if I want to. I'll just go with 1 for now. So if I click 1, what I can define here is as soon as my budget, 75% of my budget is hit, with actual time, I want an alert to be sent at the project level. I can also say that I want the contract line to be deactivated as soon as we hit the 4,000 that is here. So I'm going to leave this unchecked. And the last element here, the smart invoice type, well, I could decide to have it set up at manual. So I'm the one deciding on when I want to invoice this contract line. Or I could set it up to be invoiced automatically on a monthly basis. And we'll see a little bit later on today how I can, the date that I can establish, define so that it runs automatically. All right, so I'm going to leave this as manual and hit the save button. There you go. So now I've got my first contract line. I have a budget of 4,000, and I know that once my budget is hit at 75%, I will get an alert at the project level. My contract is good. That's all I wanted to do. So my next step is to create my team. So I'm going to go to the team tab, and I'm going to add a member. So I have the option here between selecting a member via the role. So let's say I'm looking for a consultant. And then PSOhub will show me the members, the users within the organization that do have this role assigned to them. And again, we'll get to see later on today how I create roles in PSOhub and how I assign them to my two users. So I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to put Caroline as being one of my member. You see that there's a default rate that has also followed automatically when I selected consultant. I can override this rate at the project level. So maybe it's 125 in this case. And that's it. I can say hit the save button. I'm going to add another member. In this case, I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to say I really want to have Gracia as part of the project, and she has two roles assigned to her. So I'm going to go with project manager, and in this case, I'm going to put her rate as 200 and hit save. There you go. If I wanted to, I could also have here Gracia, if I select her again, as a consultant. So maybe she'll play the role of a consultant as well within this project. So her rate would be 150 for that particular case here. If I click on send alert, that means that whenever I hit the budget, Gracia will also receive an email telling her that there's been, that the first alert, 75% of my budget has been reached. All right, so I'm good with this. My team is now built. My contract is defined. My budget is defined as well. What I need to do now is make sure that at the project level here, if I scroll down and I hit the edit button, I want to make sure that I identified her also here as a project manager in this specific section here. By doing so, PSOhub will identify her as a project manager, of course, but also will show her a list of her projects only, and she will also have access to, in her project manager dashboard, to this project per se. Since I'm here, I'm going to also add the invoice contact for this specific mandate. So I'm going to select Alfredo and hit save. There you go. All right, ready to now to start booking time. At this moment, the project is set as proposal, and this is standard what we do in PSOhub. We don't put it as active right away. That gives you time to work on the contract, to build out your team, and make sure that everything's all set up correctly before you give it access for time and expense entry and invoicing. If I click on the down arrow here, I can go directly to active, and basically that will allow people now to see that project in their timesheet. If you work with a HubSpot, you want to go directly to active. But if you do not work with HubSpot, if you work with a different CRM system, or if you actually create a project directly into PSOhub without being linked to a CRM system, you might want to leverage the other stages that you have at the contract level. So until you hit active, proposal sent and signed will make it impossible for you to book time or to invoice the project per se. All right, I'm going to put it as active now. And I do get a message at this point that, all right, my project is active. You can now go ahead with time and expenses towards this project. So if you are in the timesheet and you're trying to book time toward this project, and if you don't see the project per se, there are two reasons for that. Either the project is not active or you are not a team member of that project. So this is important when you create your project to make sure that you've got, of course, your contract set up, but also your team in, and also your project, of course, set up as active. All right, so what have we done so far? Just as a little recap. I was in HubSpot. I've promoted a deal into a project. Once I was at the project level, I made sure that I set up my contract and I defined a budget. In this case, we added some alerts. Number 3, I've identified my team and also my project manager. And I made sure that I had my project rates in. And then finally, number 4, I activated my project. So 4 easy steps that you need to do from the creation of a project until it is active. Now, I'm going to do this once again, and this time I'm going to select a different type of contract. I'm going to go back into HubSpot. I'm going to go back to my deals. And I'm going to select Orzac. All right, so once again, I've got my contacts here. I've got my company. The deal's about 15,000. The stage is closed as 1. So I'm going to scroll down in the right section, and I'm going to click on Create Project. There you go. And now I'm going to dive into the project per se. All right, project has been created. I do have the number appearing here. My contact, both of my contacts have followed. The deal amount is located here. I'm going to set up the contract per se. I'm going to click Create from Template. And this time it's going to be a software development that I want to find here. And hit Save. Now, you see this is a different type of template. So I have multiple groups, and in this case, they represent phases within the contract per se. So design, development, and testing are my phases here. And in each case, I've got different contract lines, of course. Important to understand that a contract really is the structure of your project, of course. This is how you're going to book your time and expenses, but this is also how you're going to invoice the client. So on your invoice per se, you will get to see the description of each one of those contract lines that you see here. So it's important when you think about defining your templates of exactly how you want the structure to be laid out and to be presented to your client. But technically, it should represent your contract. All right, I'm going to open up the first contract line here. And in this case, I'm going to leave the description as is, but I'm going to change the contract type. So it was defined by default as a fixed fee in this specific template. I want to change this to a time and material. And I'm going to enter a budget of 2,000. I'm going to also make it smarter right away. So I'm going to click Enable Smart Contract. And I'm going to use 2 alerts. The first one is going to be set at 70%. And the second alert is going to be set at 90%. I'm going to leave it as no deactivation on budget overrun, and I'm going to leave the smart invoice type as manual as well. Now I'm going to save that contract line. The second one, solution design, I'm going to open up, and I'm going to leave it as a fixed fee. And in this case, you see that the amount field is now available for me to enter. So I'm going to set up here, I'm going to enter here what we've agreed with regard to the specific contract line. So I'm going to put 3,000, and automatically the budget is set up at 3,000, but I can change the budget if I want to. Now the amount field that you see here in the case of a fixed fee is what I've agreed with the client. This is the amount I'm going to invoice no matter how many hours it will take me to execute this specific design. In case of a time and material, the amount is never available for me. What happens is that when I book my hours, it's actually the value of those hours that will be automatically put against the amount. Because this is a fixed fee and I cannot, of course, invoice more than the 3K that is here, it's very important for me that I enable my smart contract feature here. And I'm going to also leverage 2 alerts. The first one is going to be a different 50%, and the other one is going to be 75%. So you see that you can set up your alerts at the contract line level. So it's not an overall alert at the project level, but rather at the contract line level. The rest is fine. In the smart invoice type that you see here, because this is a fixed fee, I have different, if you will, invoicing scheme that I can leverage. So I've got upon percentage of completion, also recurring, and finally with installments. So percentage to be paid, to be invoiced, sorry, on specific due dates. We're not going to go over the smart invoicing today. I do hold a webinar in a week from now that goes, I'm going to walk you through all these kinds of scenarios. What's important for me today is that you see that for your fixed fees and your fixed amount, you have different ways of invoicing them. At this moment, we don't see it, but it is on a roadmap to also include retainers with regards to fixed fees. All right, so I've got my fixed fee all set up. I'm going to save this now. There you go. And now I see the amount is showing up here. My budget is also showing up there. I'm going to make sure that my other fixed fees are also correctly set up. So development is fine. My amount here will be 5K. And I'm going to leave it without an alert. And my final one, testing, I'm going to put also an amount of 5K. That's it, I'm done, and save. All right. At this moment, I've defined every contract lines that came with the template. Now, I do want to add another group to this contract, so I'm going to click on Add Line, because I will have most probably some expenses here. So I'm going to click on Edit Groups, and I'm going to simply add a new group. By default, it brings me 40, but I could change it if I wanted to and give myself some room in between the group that I have here. So I'm going to put expenses, hit close. There you go. And I'm going to add a line, of course, with that group. So I'm going to click the drop-down menu to access my group expenses. My line ID will be 001, and the name will be expenses. And this is right here, expenses, budget, we'll put 250 again in this case. And I'm going to hit the save button. So I can easily modify my template here, not only by modifying what is already there or deleting what is already there, but also adding contract lines and also adding contract groups. All right, so my contract is done. Next step, number 3, is to, of course, add my team member. So in this case, again, I'm going to set up myself as a, let's select this, I am under Gracia in this specific environment, and I'm going to select the role of project manager. The rate I'm going to change in this case to 200. And I'm also going to check send alert here and hit save. And I'm going to add also myself as a consultant. Now it's showing me both myself and Caroline. We'll leave it as is. And here 175 is my rate in this case here. And once again, if I wanted to, I could have also in this case another consultant as my team member. All right, my team is completed. I'm going to make sure that I identify also here my project manager. So it would be Gracia and my invoice contact, Marty, and hit save. There you go. Next step, proposal. I'm going to make this as active. There you go. I'm ready to roll. Okay, very straightforward. 4 steps, promoting a deal to a project. From there, I define my contract, set up my budget, and set up some alerts if I want to, of course. Build my team, make sure that my project manager is identified and the invoice contact, of course, and set up my project as active. So I did this from HubSpot into PSOhub. I can also, if I want to, create project directly in PSOhub. In this case, I'm going to leverage this guy here, the create project. This allows me, for example, to create projects that are related to support contract, or even internal projects. Or even if I don't work with HubSpot, I can also leverage the creation of project. If I work with different CRM, if I don't have a CRM account either, then I can just directly into PSOhub create my project and manage my project from here. I'm going to, in this case, create an internal project. The customer, we made sure that we had also into this environment the company per se. The due days invoice is something that is a default value that we'll see where it's set up. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to make myself the project manager for this one. And the contract template is going to be internal. But most importantly, I'm going to make sure that I identify this project as being internal. Click yes and click create. There you go. And now PSOhub is opening the project per se. And now you see that I've got Again, a very nice template that gives me all kinds of contract lines where I can book my time, but also expenses. So in the case of an internal, we might talk about business development, R&D, but also internal meetings, personal development, admin work, other work, etc. So you can see, you can of course have your own internal template that you can set up here. Once again, I need to make sure that I've got my team members in. If I don't, basically people will not be able to book time towards this project. Now you see that I'm selecting the role, because I also need to select the role here. My rate is 100, but I also put it at 0 if I want to. I can also create a specific internal role, rate for this specific, for my internal project, instead of at maybe a different rate. So I'm going to click save here. And I'm going to also select myself, Gracia, in here. And also put it at 0 and hit save. All right, I'm going to make sure that I had already identified my project manager as being Gracia, so I'm all set here. We don't have an invoice contact because we'll never invoice this specific project. So what's my next step? Make sure that this is set as a active. There you go. All right, going back into my projects, the list display of all the projects, you see that I've got my internal project showing up here. I've got ORZAC, what we just done just a minute ago, and I also have my consultancy project, which was the first deal that we promoted into a project. Next step, I'm going to go into my timesheet now to book time. So if I click on time and expenses here, you see I've got two options regarding timesheet calendar and the timesheet grid. The timesheet calendar is what we call a self-driving timesheet, meaning that if you are like me and you live literally in your calendar, Outlook or Google, this is the best option for you because it will actually bring all of your appointments into the timesheet and convert those appointments into time entry. So you need, of course, to connect your calendar, whether Outlook or Google, to the timesheet calendar. We'll get to see that also today. But just to show what it brings you here is that booking your week is pretty easy at this point because I'm just going to have to link those time entry to a project. Now, if you look at my Google agenda here, you get to see that this is basically what was brought over. There's only one missing appointment, and it's this one here, the sport from 9 to 10:30 on Monday. And that specific appointment has been set up as private. So when I actually go into HubSpot, PSOhub, sorry, it doesn't bring it here. So a private appointment will not be carried into the timesheet. Now you see that there are different colors right now. And that is due to the self-driving functionality that we have in PSOhub that will actually, when it brings all your appointment into the timesheet, it will actually try to match it to an existing project. And you will see how far it goes by the color per se. So if I have an appointment that is grayed out, that means that PSOhub was not able to match this to an existing project. So I'm going to click, for example, on R&D. So R&D in this case is a link to an internal project. Clicking on the gray cell opened up the registration, of course, of my time entry. And now I have under time classification the option of selecting a project, which would be a billable project, an external project per se. I can book it towards an absence, holidays, or internal. So I'm going to select internal here. And now automatically it brings me the customer, my internal project per se, and I've got my different contract line. So this is R&D, so I want to make sure that it goes towards my research and development. My role is fine. R&D are working on project internal XYZ. Once I've specified this, I'm going to hit save. The next time that I actually have an appointment in my calendar that is identified as R&D, PSO will recognize that I've already assigned this to this contract line, to this project, and it will do the assignment on its own. So the more you work with the more you use the timesheet calendar, the smarter it gets. So at the end, basically, PSO will do the job for you and will assign the majority of your projects automatically to these time entries. So the dark one, as you can see, is something that PSO has already figured out. In this case, that time entry was a recurring meeting. I had the same the week before. That's why PSO recognized it. And when it came into this week, it was already automatically match this project. The ones that are in light green are the ones that PSO says, okay, just let's make sure that I've got this right. And it's going to suggest that I select this specific project under this specific customer. So I've got the new app. This is good. Front-end design is also what I wanted here. So I'm going to go ahead here and say, all right, this is good. My number of hours is good. So everything's all right. My description here comes from the description that I have in my calendar. All set up. I'm going to click save. And basically, next time I have that same type of appointment and I bring it to the timesheet, it will be booked automatically. So I've got this first guy here. Second one here is also set up. I just need to confirm that this is what I want regarding that specific project. I'm all good. This is what I want, and I'm going to hit save now. My doctor's appointment here, I'm going to open up this guy and I'm going to select absence. In this case, there's no project. I'm going to hit save. And for my personal day off, I'm going to select holiday and again hit save. Even if these appointments did come from my calendar, I can go ahead and I can move them if I want to. And I can also, if I want, I can also increase them. So basically, the meeting was set up for 1 hour but lasted longer. I can modify it accordingly. All right, it's possible for me to do manual entries from here. So if I click on a couple of cells, it opens up, of course, my same screen as we've seen before. So I'm going to select this specific RZAC, this specific project. So we want a front-end design to appear here as well. Consultant, I'm going to change that for project manager. Description would be a meeting online with client, and I'm going to hit the save button. There you go, and it's here. I can also click on new time entry, and in this case, it's going to open up the time entry as of right now. I'm going to close the date and time and just put in a number of hours. Let's say 2 hours here as well, and the customer will be this guy here. I can change this. This is the only one I want, and meeting, and hit save. So it's very easy, of course, to book time manually as well as to bring your appointments into the timesheet. If you're working during the weekend, unfortunately or fortunately, you're also able to leverage the Saturday and Sunday to book your time. On the top of the screen, you get to see the number of hours that we've registered so far, so 19 on 40, and that 40 is something that you define also when you define the settings of PSOhub. We'll get to that today as well. And I also see here a percentage of utilization. So this number here is telling me basically how utilized my time was for this week. And it is based on actual external time. So it excludes in the utilization my day off, the fact that I'm being out for the doctor, and also it will exclude internal projects. So it's based on my billable time, what you see here. We'll get to see also where we set up those thresholds later on today. In addition to this timesheet calendar, I can also leverage the timesheet grid. Now, the timesheet grid is what you would call the fast-track grid, if you will. It's a different layout. It's a linear format. And because, of course, we're working with the same data, whatever I enter in the timesheet calendar will also show up in the timesheet grid. But most of the time, people will either work with the timesheet calendar or they will work with the timesheet grid. And here, very simply, all I have to do is excuse me, basically go in and I can already update whatever I had here. So for example, my front-end project manager here of my 2 hours that I booked in timesheet calendar is showing up here. I can add some time here, be another hour there. And I can also add a new line. So now I've got 2, 5, let me put another one here, 2 here, and 1 hour there. And I'm going to add a new line here, so project, so a different layout, but same principle. RZAC, my project is good, and I'm going to go with the solution design here. I want to enter first time as a project manager. I'm going to click create. Now it's going to add a line to this environment here. In this case, I'm going to enter here as a project manager. We'll go with 3 hours here and maybe 3 hours there. And I'm also going to make sure that I've spent some consultant time on that same project. I don't have to scroll down. I can also type in the number here. Very good. And solution design consultant is good. There you go. So I'm going to make sure that I've got 2 hours here and 2 hours there and 2 hours here. I'm done with this. I'm going to hit the save. And now my timesheet has been saved. Okay, so 2 ways of booking time. The first one is very, very quick. The timesheet calendar will bring me basically my calendar into the timesheet, and I'll be able to convert it into time entries or the timesheet grid if you don't live in your calendar, but rather in very specific assignments that are pretty much the same. Timesheet grid is a good option for you. All right, I'm going to click on expenses now. I'm going to book one expense. Click add expense. Choose my customer, or Zach is the one I want. Project is good, other expenses. We have categories that you can define in PSOhub. So let's say I'm going to call this other. Description would be FedEx. And I also have the amount here, let's say it was a big package. Now you see that I've got sales tax that is already showing up here. We'll get to see where you can set up your default value regarding sales tax. I'm going to add also an attachment to this expense entry, so my receipt, and click open, save. There you go. And now my document is here as well, and hit the save button. All right, so I've booked time, I've booked expenses. Let's go see my project. Go back in, or Zach. So on the right hand side, I see, of course, my hours. If I click, and I also see my expenses. If I click on either one of the link, it brings me to the list display of all my entries. And you can see that in the case of my expense, I have access here. If I open the record, I have access here to the document as well. So it's easy for me to validate what was entered here. Let me cancel that. We also have, of course, the possibility to export information to Excel, pretty much everywhere within the solution. All right, I've got my hours, I've got my expenses. Let's take a look at what's going on at the contract level. So we see that we've got different colors already identified. The first one, the front end design, you see that this is orange. The number of hours booked is showing up in the used section here, so 1600, but it was 2K, and my amount, in this case of a T&M, is the same as the used. If I open up this contract line, I scroll down, I see that my first alert was at 70% of the budgets, and that's why basically I see the information in orange. I did not hit the second alert. In the case of my second contract line here, the fixed fee, I see that it is in red. So I have, if I go down to the smart contract, I've hit the first and the second alert. So it always shows me at the worst case scenario. In this case, it shows me that I've hit the second alert of 75%. And that's what it's telling me here by very visually by putting this in red. All right. I'm going to create an invoice now. We'll get back to the alerts in just a moment, but I want to finish the flow basically. I've got my time entered. I've got my expenses that are also entered. I'm going now to create an invoice from here. I'm going to hit create invoice. There you go. The name of the invoice is automatically the name of the project. I can add it, I can edit, and I can add to it. So maybe this would be my weekly billing. By default, it brings me to the last day of the previous month. I'm going to fast forward in this case and go to the 14th of June. And now it brings me all the contract lines that are available for invoicing. So in the case of front-end design, I've got 1600 to be invoiced. Let me just change this because I want to go on until the 10th of June only. And now we see that my to be invoiced is a little bit different because I did not include the Thursday and Friday, but I just want to include up until Wednesday. I'm going to also invoice my fixed fee here, solution design, because I did book some time, so I feel comfortable invoicing part of the contract line, and I'm also going to invoice my expenses. These two I'm not going to touch, so I'm going to click create now. And now PSO is generating my invoice per se, and you get to see it here. So I also see the detail. In this case, it is summarized 5 hours. And to be invoiced is 1,000. And I also have, let me close this here, my fixed fee. In the case of my fixed fee, I can change the amount here. So instead of 3,000, we're going to invoice 2,500 because we were not done with that contract line. And I'm going to hit save and also see, of course, my expense that is also showing up here. If I want to see a preview of that invoice, I click preview. And now it brings me a draft, in this case, of my information related to the specific invoice with all of my contract line showing up here with the tax that is also here. Let me close this now. If I integrate with a financial solution, then I can click send invoice and it will generate an invoice in my financial backend solution. In this case, I'm not yet integrated to a financial backend solution. So if I click on send invoice, this will make it final, so I won't be able to modify the invoice anymore. I'm going to click proceed. There you go. And now I have my invoice has been generated and I see the number showing up here. If I would connect with a financial backend solution, the accounting invoice number of that financial backend solution would show here. All right, let me go back to the project now. I see next to the contract line what's been invoiced. So 1,000 here and 2,500 for this guy here. And if I could look at my hours, I also see which ones were invoiced by clicking on the detail of my hours. And of course, I can, if I want to, filter or sort by any column that you see here. So now I see that these three time entries were invoiced. Let me go back to the project now. If I decide to create another invoice, this time I'm going to move it to the week after. So one step further here. There you go. And now it brings me the remainder of my time entry, 600. And I'm just going to invoice that specific time entry here. Create. And there you go. My invoice is now generated. Going back to the project. I have one invoice that is still a draft and one invoice that has been sent. If the invoice is paid, I can come here and manually set it up as being paid. Or if I do integrate with a financial backend solution, as soon as it is paid in the financial backend solution, it will also be updated here at the invoice level. So it's really completely transparent. Whatever you do in your financial backend will also be reflected back here at the project level. All right, let me go back to the project. Now, during the whole execution of the projects, we have done a lot. We've booked some time, expenses. We've also, of course, went over and we've triggered some alerts, and we've also sent invoices, and also some of the invoices were paid. All of those activities are now showing up here at the project level. So I get to see, in this case, everything that has happened during the project. I see that when I changed the project to being active, I saw the first alert percentage of my first contract line. Then I saw the first alert percentage of 50% on the other one. When my invoice was created, when my invoice was sent, and of course, I'm going to give it some time, but when my invoice was paid will also show up here in my activity feed. That information that is showing up here will also show up at the deal level. So if I go back on the right-hand side of my section here, and if I dive right into the deal, so I just need to click on Show Related Deal in HubSpot, it brings me back to the deal, where I will also see all of the information that occurred in PSOhub will also show up here. So I get to follow every important milestone of the project directly in HubSpot. And that information is available at the deal level, but also, if I want to, at the company level and at the contact level. So it's very easy for me to see what's going on directly from HubSpot. All right, let me go back here into the project and go back to my contract that is here. All right. Last thing that I want to mention regarding this overview demo is that, of course, we had identified that we wanted this person to get an alert as a project manager. So now if I go to the dashboard that we have in PSOhub, so I'm going to click on PSOhub now. It's going to give me access to the financial dashboard. We actually have three dashboards. So the first one, financial dashboard, will give you an overview, an overall view of your projects, of your invoice, what's been paid. It will give you also a status regarding the health of your projects, and also it's going to show you from a time management perspective what's going on regarding the people that work within your organization. We also have a project dashboard. In this case, the project manager will come here and see only his or her projects. In principle here, I'll see what's been invoiced and what's the status regarding those invoices per se. I see what the project status is with regard to my project, and of course the health. I've got my KPIs regarding the current project that I'm working with. The project activities are also showing up here. And also I've got under my activities, I do have some alerts that are also showing up here. So for example, here, I see that on the project ORZAC, the budget is over the first alert percentage. So if I mark it as red, then I'm fine and know it's going to disappear. So it's very easy for me to manage directly from here also my projects. And then finally, in my personal dashboard, this will be for your users. I get to see in this case, what's happening regarding my time entries and also the time management that I see here. Let me just refresh the screen. There you go. So I see my internal days spent on project, and what's going on also. And if I have some alerts, in this case I do, it also shows the alert right here. So I can mark it as red as soon as I've seen it, and it disappears from my activities that you see here. All right. So this is the overview of the core functionalities of PSOhub. Of course, we've got, from a self-driving perspective, the timesheet. We also have the functionality of the GPS. We also have the based on the document management. But this is something that we'll talk later, because I do have also a specific webinar on self-driving and predictive analysis that are additional functionalities within PSOhub. For today, I wanted to show you the core, so I hope that this was good information. Now I'm going to show you how to configure PSOhub. It's very important when you start working with a solution that you at least configure 4 basic settings. So I'm going to show you exactly where we're going to create them now. The first thing that you'll do within when you create an account, sorry about that, when you create your account per se, just open up. So when you will create your account, PSO is going to ask you, do you want to integrate with HubSpot? If you say yes, it will ask you to confirm that you're requesting integration permission with between the 2 solutions. And as soon as you click grant access, what will happen is that, of course, the project entity will appear now in your deal. Now, we saw that in HubSpot. If I go there now, we saw that I see all of my activities showing up here. The fact that I see all of these activities is due to an additional settings that you need to do when you first start working with PSOhub and HubSpot. So in the filter by that you have here, if you click on the down arrow, you need to make sure that you also set up the integration with PSO as being active here. So if I uncheck the box PSOhub now, you'll see that the only thing that's left here is really just the activities within HubSpot per se. And as soon as I check it again, then that information is now showing up here. So it's a one-time step. So I only do it once, and after that, it applies for any deal. This is something that is available also at the company level, but also at the contact level. So here, if I click on the down arrow, and if I check on the box PSOhub, there you go. And now all the activities follow. Same principle with regards to my contacts. So it's important that you decide where do you want to show them, companies and deals, or just deals. It's up to you to decide what you want to see within HubSpot. All right, but it's an important step because it gives you high visibility of what's going on at the project level. Once this is done, then you will want to go back into PSOhub, and you want to go to the little icon, the gear icon that you see here. I have here on the left-hand side all the different entities that you need to configure. We have 4 basic ones. The first one here. These are the ones that you will want to set up right away as soon as you create your account. These are the 4 entities that you will want to set up. The first one, organization info, is pretty straightforward. You will define here the full address of your organization, and you will also set up your default settings. Now, the first one, the company currency, is something that you will already set up when you create the account per se. Once you set up your company currency, you can no longer change it. So you need to be careful of the currency that you choose. The date and number format is also something that you select when you create your account. So that's why these two options are grayed out, because you cannot change them once you set them up. After that, you've got the default value for your tax, your sales tax, and the rate. This is a default value, and you can override it at the contract line level. We'll get to see that in a moment. Of course, if you integrate PSOhub with your financial backend solution, you can leave those fields blank because you will want your financial solution to generate the tax for you. So if you work with your financial and you integrate with it, you can leave this field blank. Due days invoice, we saw that this is something, it's a value that that is displayed at the project level. We'll see in a moment how you can modify this as well. And the percentage of utilization that you see here is for the overall organization, but you can change it at the user level. We'll get to there in a moment. And the days of holiday is also something that you can set up at the user level. So default settings, pretty simple, straightforward, but something that, of course, you want to set up right off the bat. Next thing, when you create your account, you want to go to your roles and rates. Now, we saw that we had a consultant and project manager rates already assigned to two of the users. These are the roles, and these are basically the roles that come out of the box with PSOhub. If I want to, I can go in, click on the line, and I can change here the values. Let's say 125, and I can also create my own roles. So maybe I want to put senior consultant here, and in this case, put the rate at 175. So it's very easy for me to go in and to modify either the existing roles or create new ones. And if I want, I can also decide I'm going to delete a role that is not relevant for my organization. So I'm going to just go ahead and click delete. So again, very simple, very straightforward, but you need to have this set up if you want to go ahead and make sure that you can book time with the rates of your organization. The third step, user management, that's an important one as well. As soon as you create your account, PSOhub will set you up, in this case, Gracia, as an admin user, and will already have you set up here. What's important is that you modify your user to make sure you've got roles attached to you. So I'm going to open up the line here, and now I've got my two roles assigned here, but of course I can change that. So if I click on that little arrow, it brings me to another pop-up where I can say, all right, we also want this person to be a senior consultant. I'm going to click Save. And now if I want to, I can also define different parameters for that same user. So if the person is external and you want to identify this person as such, you can click yes, and the hours of that person, you'll be able to export them based on the fact that they are linked to an external resource. Timesheet required, I'm going to say yes here, and if I do that, it means that PSO is going to say, all right, if your timesheet has not been booked fully for that week, it's going to send you an activity in your dashboard. So I've put in 40 hours here, but I could put 37.5 or 50, depending on the user. Days of holidays, I can set up at the user level, and once again, my utilization is also something that I can set up at the user level. Once I'm done, I hit the Save button, and that's it. To invite new user, I'm going to click Invite, and from here I enter an address. So this would be a person, access level. This is the security and the rights of this person. We have 5 roles that you can assign. So I'm going to say this is a team member plus, so it's just for time entry. And then the role of that person in this case would be consultant, but I can also add another role. I can also say this person is also a senior consultant. Not external, hours per week, I'm going to set up at 37.5. And now I'm going to set, 0.5. And now I'm going to send the invite. And this person will receive an invite into, 40 here, doesn't like it, all right. Send the invite. And this person will receive that invite into their Outlook or Google email. Until this person accept the invitation, it will show up here in my pending invite. Very important. And until the person accepts the invitation, you won't be able to add this person as a team member on our project. This person won't be able to book time. So it's important that once the person accepts the invite, and once the person accepts the invite, that you make sure that you also assign any other parameters you want regarding that person. All right, so this is user management, and here you've got the different access levels that are set up in PSOhub. Finally, the contract template is the last basic settings that you want to review when you are creating your account in PSOhub. You've got different templates. Another example. And then from here, you can change the name of that template if you like it, or you can delete the template. And of course, you can modify the lines, exactly the same principle as what we saw at the project level. I can double click, modify. I can also, from a template level, already set up some amount. So if this is always a 5,000 activity that we charge for that specific website development, I can already put it at the template level. And then when I hit save, when I bring the contract at the project level, that amount will also follow. And I'll be able to override it also at the project level. All right, so 4 basic settings, important to review when you create your account. If you are going to integrate a PSOhub with your financial backend solution, you will still want to come here in the invoice settings, because you will want to identify here the day of the month where you want the automatic billing of your TNM to be set up. By default, we put the date number 3, but of course you can change that date if you want to. If you do not integrate with your financial backend solution and you actually work directly from PSOhub, then of course you'll want to add that information related to invoicing. This is where you set up your invoice layout. And on the right-hand side, the invoice organization info, including here the invoice reference. So I've got a prefix, a year, and a number regarding the naming convention of your invoice. And I also have in the footer where you could put the bank information where to remit the payment of your invoices. So invoice settings is important whether you integrate or not with your backend solution, financial backend solution. Tax categories. I'm able to add additional tax if I want into PSOhub. And that tax category in this case will allow me to manage my contract line differently. So if I go back into my project now, I go to ORZAC. I could identify, for example, for my expenses, if I click on accounting detail, it's possible for me to say, for my expenses, I want to have a sales tax of 6% to be applied on, as opposed to the default value of 21%. So I'm able to manage sales taxes at the contract line level and override the default value. Okay. There you go. To add a tax category is pretty straightforward. I just click the category here, and I see I have questions. I'll get back to you in just a moment. We're almost done regarding this presentation as well. So here I could say that this is sales tax provincial, and put a different percentage here, maybe 4%, and save. And I can also delete a tax category. I can do that until it's actually, if it's used somewhere, of course, I can no longer do that. You can have up to 6 decimals regarding the percentage of your sales tax here. All right, project settings is pretty straightforward. This is where you set up the naming convention of your project number. So you've got the prefix, you've got the year that is automatically incremented every beginning of the year, and you've got the number. You can change either the prefix or the number. So for example, you could say I want my project settings to start at 1001 and just leave it as is. And then the next time you project, it will start at that number. Expense categories, we saw a bit how that looked earlier on. So I've got my standard categories that come out of the box in PSOhub. I can create one or I can delete the ones that you see here. Planning template is something that we did not touch on, but within PSOhub, you can create a basic planning template, and then you've got, of course, some examples that you can leverage directly from here. All right. Integration is an important aspect, of course, of the settings. So if you do integrate with your backend solution, whether it's QuickBooks, Exact, or Moneybird, all you need to do is come here and you click Connect. It's going to ask you if you want to connect. You're going to say yes, proceed. It's going to ask you where you want to link it. So in this case, it's myself, Gracia. I'm going to say allow. There you go. And now it's bringing me to the organization info. And then from here, I just need to make sure that I enter a revenue account. It's already there in this case because I did integration before. So you want to make sure that you put your default value of the revenue that you want to Moneybird to leverage regarding this specific invoice. Now, as soon as I do this, I'm going to make sure that I save that information. And now if I go back into my project, and if I click on a contract line, and I click on accounting detail, I see now that I've got now a revenue account that's showing up here. And I can overwrite the revenue account, so maybe this is uncategorized on debt that I want to enter here. And save. So same principle as taxes, my revenue, my GL account can be also managed at the contract line level. So it's same thing as with my sales tax. If I go here now, I'm going to open up my draft that I had here. So this invoice was never sent, it's still at the draft level. I can, if I want to delete that invoice, let's say proceed. There you go. Now I'm back in the project per se. I'm going to edit the information on the left-hand side. I'm going to say that my invoice detail level is going to be detailed. And I'm going to put as a reference contract XYZ. And I'm going to save. My due date is fine, 31 is okay, but you can see that I can also override it here. I'm going to hit save. And now I'm going to create an invoice again. I'm going to move my date here a little bit further. So let's say the 11th. There you go. Select this person, this contract, and I think that should be enough. Click create. And I've got my invoice, my details showing up here. Now this time you see I've got more than one line because it shows me really the detail time entry. If I want, I can change this. So I can either change the rate or the hours if I choose to. So maybe I'm going to say I'm going to actually go with 350 for this specific assignment and hit save. All right. So from here, if I want, I can have a preview of my invoice per se. And now because it is a detailed invoice, I also have a second part where I show all of the information I've entered, including the modification that you see here. All right. I come back here, and now I'm ready to send my invoice. So if I click this now, it says my invoice is final, that's fine. And now it's generating the invoice and it's pushing it into Moneybird. So I see now my accounting number, invoice number is showing up here. If I click on it, I will land in Moneybird on that specific invoice per se. Okay, so it's very, very easy to work with this. So I'm going to go now, invoice here. This is the one I've just created. If I mark this as being paid, oops, sorry about that. Go here. And I'm just trying to find the paid now. I'm in a different environment, but anyway, as soon as I can also, of course, pay the invoice and it will show up into my project here as being paid. It takes about 5 minutes because it's not instant with regard to Moneybird, the time that it processes it and it brings it back to PSOhub, but you will see it as being paid once it's done. All right. So that's for the settings that we have within PSOhub, all of them that you see here. Subscription is basically showing you here what is your subscription. So in this case, we are with expensive, the full-blown functionality of PSOhub. The last thing I want to talk about is the integration with your calendar, whether it's Outlook or whether it's Google. So to do that, I go right under my name. I click my name, and I've got here Outlook or Google. So if I disconnect now from Google, proceed. Okay, and now if I want to connect once again, it brings me basically, I need to select my account in Google. Do I want to confirm the choice? Yes, I do. I want to allow PSO to access my calendar. There you go. Now you're going to have a message that your calendar is now connected with PSOhub. Now, what an important thing is that when you do that, it will bring the current week only In this case, we already had booked that information, but it's important to understand that when PSOhub brings that, when you do the connection, it only brings the current week into your timesheet, because it can always change. And every day the retrieval is done for that specific week, so that if you have any changes in your calendar, it's also showing up here in the timesheet. One last thing regarding where we are now, you see that I've got an additional color now showing up here. That light, dark orange is showing me that these time entries have been paid. I've been invoiced. Sorry, I've been invoiced. So we cannot change them now that they've been invoiced. All right. Okay, guys, we're done. Let me see the question that I have here. Oh, the language that PSOhub supports. At this moment, it's English. That's the only language that we support at this moment is English. Any other questions, guys? Okay, let me see here. Oh, well, you're welcome, Martin. You're welcome. Okay. If that's it for you guys, well, I want to thank you for your time. I know that we get to continue now with one of the group that we have here. Let me see here. Okay. No, good question. So I do have, will there be a process for hours approval before you send the invoice? No, Wouter. There is no approval in PSOhub. You can go ahead and as soon as the invoice, the hours are being booked, you go ahead and you create the invoice. But as you can see, you can put an invoice as a draft. You can modify the draft as well. But the approval hours is not something that we have. Okay. Will the invoice layout be flexible to change? The layout per se, if I look at the, if I go back here in the invoice settings, you can change the logo. You can also align from right, and have different type of paper, and you also have the font that you can modify according to the options that are available here. For the rest, we're leveraging with that standard layout that you just saw now. See? Okay, good question. All right. Can you send reminders for overdue invoices? So if you're working with your financial backend solution, then your financial backend solution will pick that up, and that solution will manage this. If you don't work with your financial backend solution and you work with PSOhub, which is a great option, you can resend the invoice. Absolutely. Would it be possible to make changes in time in Google Calendar and affect this on the hours reporting in PSOhub? Yes, so if you are, absolutely, so if you are changing your Google Calendar, then it will not be instant, because it runs one time per day. So the next day you'll have that change occur, and then PSOhub will bring back that appointment has been changed as a new entry. The opposite is not true. So whatever I do in the timesheet, of course, is not pushed back into your calendar. All right. Is it possibility not one time per day? It's a setting for the update. You're talking, Wouter? Yeah. Okay. I would have to get back to you, but at this moment we've set it up as one time per day. Any other questions, guys? Can you mark lines as invoice manually without actually sending invoice when you have a local financial solution? Well, when you have a local financial solution, I think best practice for me would really to really invoice invoice in PSOhub, because then the quick answer is no. You cannot mark your invoice your contract lines as being invoiced. You really need to generate the invoice per se. Okay. All right. Anything else, gentlemen? All right. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.